The gate agent's voice dripped with a smug satisfaction that echoed louder than any PA announcement in the sterile expanse of JFK's Terminal 4. "Ma'am, the VIP line is for our priority guests." The words were simple, yet they were a weapon honed to perfection and aimed directly at the woman standing before her. This woman, dressed in a tailored graphite tracksuit that cost more than the agent's monthly salary, held a first-class ticket to London. She was Dr. Alani Reed, CEO of a billion-dollar tech firm. But in that moment, she was just another target. What the agent didn't know, what no one in that bustling terminal could have possibly imagined, was that this quiet act of prejudice was about to trigger a reaction so swift, so decisive, and so breathtakingly expensive, it would send shockwaves from the departure gate all the way to the corporate boardroom. The air in John F. Kennedy International Airport had its own unique flavor, a blend of stale coffee, industrial cleaner, and the faint, anxious scent of thousands of human beings in transit. It was a symphony of controlled chaos, a place where time zones bled into one another, and the rest of the world felt both infinitely distant and claustrophobically close. For Dr. Alani Reed, it was simply a necessary inconvenience, a sterile corridor between a successful week of negotiations in New York and a critical company-defining meeting in London. Alani was the founder and CEO of Ethereum Dynamics, a firm that had revolutionized global logistics with its predictive AI routing systems. She was 42, with a mind that moved at the speed of light and a presence that was both commanding and understated. Today she had opted for comfort. Her attire was a custom Loro Piana cashmere tracksuit, the color of a storm cloud, paired with pristine white Alexander McQueen sneakers. A simple, elegant Audemars Piguet Royal Oak watch was clasped around her wrist. It was the uniform of someone who had earned the right to prioritize comfort over presentation because their reputation preceded them. Or so she thought. She approached the Global Voyager Airlines Gate B23, where Flight 110 to London Heathrow was beginning its boarding process. The sign was illuminated in crisp digital letters, VIP and first-class boarding. Alani joined the short, privileged line, pulling out her phone to display the digital boarding pass that clearly read, "Reed Alani. Seat 2A, first class." At the podium stood a woman in her late 50s. Her name tag, pinned slightly askew on her navy blue uniform, read Brenda. She had a tightly permed nest of blonde hair glasses perched on the end of her nose, and a mouth set in a permanent line of mild disapproval. Brenda surveyed the line, her gaze flicking over tailored suits and designer handbags with a practiced, dismissive air. When her eyes landed on Alani, they lingered for a fraction of a second too long. Alani saw it. It was a look she had seen 1,000 times before in boardrooms at investor meetings and in high-end boutiques. It was a look of subtle recalibration, of a mind trying to reconcile what it saw with its own deeply ingrained set of assumptions. When Alani reached the front, she smiled politely and held out her phone. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm and even. Brenda did not return the smile. She glanced at the phone screen, then up at Alani, her eyes scanning her from head to toe. The appraisal was slow, deliberate, and deeply insulting. "The economy boarding hasn't started yet, ma'am," she said, her voice carrying a patronizing sweetness. "That will be in about 20 minutes from the other line." Alani's smile didn't falter, but a cool stillness settled over her. "I believe I'm in the right place," she replied gently, pushing her phone a little closer. "Seat 2A. Brenda squinted at the screen, as if the glowing pixels were a complex legal document. "This is the VIP line. For our priority guests," she repeated this time, enunciating each word with exaggerated clarity, as if speaking to a child or someone who didn't understand English. Yes, I know, Alani said, the ice in her tone now unmistakable. First class, seat 2A, as you can see. The man behind Alanu, a portly individual in a rumpled suit named Carter Jennings, huffed impatiently. For goodness sake, just scan the pass and let's get on with it. He grumbled not at Brenda, but in Alani's direction. Brenda seemed to draw strength from his impatience. She straightened up, a petty tyrant on her little podium kingdom. I need to see your identification, please, and I'll need to verify this ticket. There seem to be discrepancies sometimes. This was the moment the veneer of civility cracked. There was no discrepancy. The process for every other passenger had been a simple scan and go. Alani was being singled out. It was blatant, unprofessional, and humiliating. The other first-class passengers were now watching their expressions, ranging from mild curiosity to visible annoyance at the delay. A discrepancy. Alani repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. Please enlighten me. What discrepancy do you see? Procedure. Brenda snapped her composure, slipping into open hostility. I'm just following procedure. We have the right to verify any ticket that seems unusual. The word unusual hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A black woman in a tracksuit holding a $10,000 first-class ticket was in Brenda's world unusual. Alani slowly reached into her Bottega Veneta handbag and pulled out her passport, placing it firmly on the counter. Dr. Alani Reed. The name matches the ticket. The ticket is valid. I am standing in the correct line. Now, are you going to scan my pass, or do you need to call a supervisor to help you perform this very basic function of your job? The challenge was laid bare. Brenda's face flushed a blotchy red. She felt the eyes of the other passengers on her. She had committed to this path, and now backing down felt like a personal defeat. She picked up the passport, her fingers trembling slightly with anger, and made a show of scrutinizing the photo, then the ticket, then Alani's face again. It's just, you don't look like our typical first-class passengers. She finally mumbled, the prejudice spilling out raw and unfiltered. Carter Jennings let out a short, derisive laugh from behind Alani. You can say that again, he muttered under his breath, loud enough for everyone to hear. A profound silence fell over the gate area. The murmur of the terminal seemed to fade away, leaving only the fluorescent hum of the overhead lights. For Alani, the world narrowed to Brenda's pinched, triumphant face. This was no longer about a flight. It was about dignity, and she had just been publicly stripped of hers. I see, Alani said, her voice a whisper of steel. She slowly withdrew her passport and her phone from the counter. She took one step back, her expression unreadable. Fine, you are correct. I will not be boarding with this group. Brenda's lips curved into a smug, victorious smile. She had won. She had put this woman in her place. But Alani wasn't finished. She turned not to the economy line, but away from the gate entirely. She walked 10 paces to an empty set of seats, sat down with the poise of a queen ascending her throne, and pulled out her phone. Her fingers began to move across the screen with a speed and precision that was almost terrifying. Brenda watched her go, a smirk playing on her lips as she turned to Carter Jennings. Next, please, she chirped, her voice full of saccharine politeness. She had no idea she had just lit the fuse on a bomb that would obliterate her career, and she had just handed the detonator to her victim. The 10 minutes that followed were a masterclass in silent warfare. While Brenda triumphantly scanned the boarding passes of the remaining first-class passengers, basking in the conspiratorial glances from Carter Jennings, Alani was orchestrating a corporate maneuver of breathtaking audacity. Her first call was to Jackson Cole, her CFO and longtime confidant. He picked up on the first ring. Alani, everything all right? You should be boarding. Jackson's voice was sharp, perpetually caffeinated. "Change of plans, Jack." Alani said, her tone level, betraying none of the fury simmering beneath the surface. "I need you to do something for me. It's unorthodox and it's time-sensitive. No questions for now, just execution. Can you do that?" "You know I can." "What's the play?" "Global Voyager Airlines, Flight 110 JFK to LHR. I want you to buy every single remaining seat in the first-class cabin, right now. I don't care what it costs. Use the emergency discretionary fund. I will authorize it personally. I want them all." "And Jackson," she paused, "I want confirmation within 10 minutes. There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. Jackson Cole, a man who regularly dealt with 9-figure transactions and hostile takeovers, was momentarily stunned. He could hear the controlled rage in her voice, a tone she reserved for only the most egregious betrayals or obstacles. "Every seat," he finally asked, the words laced with disbelief. "Alani, there are 16 seats in that cabin. One is yours. That's 15 seats. At last-minute prices you're looking at, north of $150,000, maybe more." "I am acutely aware of the cost, Jack," she replied, her voice dropping an octave. "This is not a financial decision. It's a strategic one. Get it done. 10 minutes. She hung up before he could reply. Her next action was a quick text to her executive assistant in London. "Amelia Protocol Omega. Activate the London ground team. Full detail. I want them at Heathrow Terminal 5 arrivals. And I need you to find me the name of the head of passenger services for Global Voyager at JFK." Now, Protocol Omega was a rarely used contingency reserved for crisis situations. It meant mobilizing her entire support staff, drivers, security, and local fixers with no questions asked. As Alani worked, the scene at the gate continued to unfold. Brenda was now handling the business-class passengers, her mood visibly improved. She shared a small laugh with her junior colleague, a young man named Ben, who had watched the entire exchange with Alani with a look of deepening horror. Ben had tried to catch her eye to offer a silent apology, but she was a wall of impenetrable focus. He knew what Brenda had done was wrong, a gross abuse of her minimal authority, but he was new, barely 6 months on the job, and terrified of her. Carter Jennings, having settled into his seat 1F, was feeling particularly pleased with himself. He'd already ordered a pre-departure glass of champagne and was loudly complaining to the flight attendant about the riff-raff they were letting into the priority lines these days. He represented a rival firm, Sterling Coal Analytics, and was flying to London for the exact same reason as Alani, a final-stage pitch to the board of the Halcyon Group, a massive international conglomerate looking to overhaul their global logistics. He had no idea his main competitor was Dr. Alani Reed of Ethereum Dynamics. He just saw a woman who in his mind didn't belong. 5 minutes passed. Alani's phone buzzed. It was a message from Jackson. "It's a bloodbath. Their system is fighting me, flagging it as a fraudulent transaction. I've got 3 of our best finance guys on it, now pushing it through manually, with Amex Centurion Corporate Services. They're on the line with the airline's back-end booking system. We're going to get it done." Alani took a deep, calming breath. She watched as the business class line dwindled. Soon they would call for premium economy. Time was running out. At the podium, Ben nervously checked his monitor. A strange series of notifications began to flash on the screen. Seat 3A, booked. Seat 4F, booked. Seat 2C, booked. One after another, the entire first-class cabin map, which had been a mix of occupied green and vacant grey, was turning a solid, immutable green. Brenda," Ben said, his voice hesitant. "Something weird is happening with the first-class manifest." Brenda waved a dismissive hand. "It's probably just a system glitch. It is useless. Ignore it." But the notifications kept coming, a relentless cascade of confirmations. Ben's eyes widened. This was no glitch. This was a targeted, systematic acquisition. He looked over at the woman in the graphite tracksuit, who was now staring directly at them, her phone held loosely in her hand, an expression of cold, absolute certainty on her face. A chill went down his spine. 8 minutes. Alani's phone buzzed again. This time it was an email, a formal itinerary receipt from Global Voyager Airlines. At the top in bold letters, confirmation 15 first-class seats, flight GV110, JFK LHR. Attached was a PDF with 15 new boarding passes, all bearing different names, the names of her board members, her senior developers, her lead strategists. It was a ghost team, a phantom army she had just summoned out of thin air. The total charge at the bottom of the email was a staggering 187,452,050. Alani stood up. The movement was fluid, deliberate. Every eye at the gate area seemed to be drawn to her. The premium economy passengers paused. The gate agent stopped what they were doing. She began to walk back towards the podium, her expensive sneakers making no sound on the polished linoleum floor. The 10 minutes were up. The war was over. The verdict was about to be delivered. As Alani approached the podium for the second time, the atmosphere was electric with unspoken tension. Brenda saw her coming, and her face, which had been relaxed and cheerful, hardened into a mask of defiance. She crossed her arms, bracing for another confrontation. She assumed Alani was returning to plead, to argue, perhaps to demand a supervisor. She was wrong on all counts. "I thought I told you," Brenda began, her voice sharp. "Please check your system again." Alani interrupted her voice, cutting through the air like a shard of ice. "There appears to have been an update to the flight manifest." Ben was already staring at his screen, his mouth agape. "Brenda, you need to see this," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "The entire first-class cabin. It's fully booked, all of it. Just now." Brenda scoffed, leaning over to look at his monitor. She expected to see a minor error. What she saw instead made the blood drain from her face. Every seat in the first-class section was marked as checked in. 15 names, all booked and confirmed in the last 2 minutes. She clicked on one of the names, and the booking details appeared. Purchase time 10:38 a.m. Guest. Purchaser Ethereum Dynamics corporate account. Her eyes darted from the screen to Alani, who stood there perfectly still, radiating an aura of immense, untapped power. The smugness on Brenda's face evaporated, replaced by a wave of confusion, which quickly morphed into dawning horror. It was impossible. It made no sense. This must be a mistake," Brenda stammered, pointing a shaky finger at the screen. "A computer error." "It is not an error," Alani stated calmly. She held up her phone, displaying the confirmation email. "My company, Ethereum Dynamics, has just purchased every available seat in your first-class cabin for my team. They will be meeting me in London. As their CEO, I require the space to prepare for our meeting. Therefore, the cabin needs to be empty for my flight." The sheer, unadulterated audacity of the statement hung in the air. The other passengers, the ones who had been watching this drama unfold, were stunned into silence. Jaws literally dropped. The concept of buying out an entire international first-class cabin on a whim was so far beyond the realm of their experience, it seemed like something out of a movie. Brenda's mind simply couldn't process it. You bought 15 seats." "That is correct," Alani said. "Which brings me to my next point. Since I am the sole designated passenger for my group on this flight, and the entire cabin is now booked for my use, I will need you to deplane the other passengers who have already boarded." The request was delivered not as a demand, but as a simple statement of fact. This was the consequence of the new reality she had created. A new voice cut in. What in God's name is going on here? It was the gate supervisor, David Chen, a harried-looking man who had been summoned by a frantic text from Ben. Ben pointed at his screen, unable to form words. David peered at the monitor, his eyebrows shooting up to his hairline. He looked at Alani, at her phone, at the official confirmation, and then back at Brenda, whose face was now the color of ash. David was a veteran of the airline industry. He had seen strikes, weather disasters, and celebrity meltdowns. He had never seen this. He understood instantly that he was no longer dealing with a customer service issue. This was a corporate event, an exercise of financial power so extreme it defied all standard protocols. "Ma'am," David said, addressing Alani with the utmost deference. "I am David Chen, the gate supervisor. Can I just clarify? You have purchased these 15 seats." "Your systems will confirm that Mr. Chen," Alani replied. "The transaction is complete. The tickets are issued. The seats belong to my company. However, there is one passenger in particular who needs to be removed. Seat 1F. A wave of understanding and cold dread washed over Brenda. Seat 1F. It was the obnoxious man who had laughed at Alani. Carter Jennings. David Chen swallowed hard. Deplaning a first-class passenger who had already been seated was a logistical nightmare and a customer service catastrophe. But refusing to honor 15 legitimately purchased last-minute tickets was an even bigger one. The revenue from that single transaction was more than the gate made in an entire day. He was caught between a rock and a hard place, but the rock was a smug passenger, and the hard place was a woman who had just spent nearly $200,000 to make a point. I understand," David stammered. "David, we will of course have to accommodate your purchase. Please allow us a few moments to sort this out." He turned to Brenda, his voice a low, furious hiss. "What did you do?" Brenda could only shake her head, speechless. The petty power she had wielded so carelessly just minutes before had turned to dust in her hands. The woman she had tried to humiliate now controlled the entire situation. Alani stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Brenda. She held up her original boarding pass for seat 2A. "Now," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying across the silent gate, "may I please board the plane?" Without waiting for an answer, she handed the phone to a stunned Ben. He scanned it. The machine chirped its happy affirmative beep. It was the loudest sound in the world. Alani picked up her carry-on, gave a final dismissive look at the shell-shocked Brenda, and walked down the jet bridge, leaving a scene of chaos, confusion, and utter disbelief in her wake. She had not raised her voice. She had not caused a scene. She had simply rewritten the rules of the game. The interior of the Global Voyager 7707's first-class cabin was an oasis of muted greys and polished chrome. The 16 pod-like seats were angled for privacy, each a self-contained world of luxury. As Alani stepped aboard, the lead flight attendant, a warm woman named Maria, greeted her with a practiced smile. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Reed," Maria said, glancing at her boarding pass. "You're in 2A, right this way." Alani gave a small, appreciative nod. "Thank you, Maria. Actually, I'll be the only one in the cabin today." Maria's smile faltered for a second. "Oh, I'm sorry, Ma'am, but we're almost fully booked in first today. We just have a few empty—" Before she could finish, the phone at the galley station buzzed. It was David Chen from the gate, his voice tight with stress. Maria listened, her eyes growing wider with each word. Her professional composure was flawless, but a flicker of astonishment crossed her face. She looked from the phone back to Alani, her expression now a mixture of awe and profound respect. See, Maria said into the receiver. Yes, I understand completely. We will prepare the cabin accordingly. Thank you, David. She hung up the phone and turned to Alani, her demeanor transformed. My sincerest apologies, Dr. Reed. I was just informed. Please make yourself at home. Any seat you wish. The entire cabin is at your disposal. Can I get you something to drink before we make the necessary adjustments? A glass of water would be lovely, thank you, Alani replied, settling into her original seat 2A. The necessary adjustments began almost immediately. A flustered-looking David Chen boarded the plane, followed by 2 uniformed security officers. He walked directly to seat 1F, where Carter Jennings was sipping his second glass of champagne, his face flushed with self-satisfaction. Mr. Jennings, David began, his voice low and apologetic. I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news. Due to a unique booking situation, we've had to reassign your seat. We will of course book you on the next available flight and offer you significant compensation for the inconvenience. Carter Jennings stared at him as if he'd just started speaking Martian. Reassign my seat. Are you insane? I'm not moving. I have a meeting in London. A very important one. Sir, I assure you we wouldn't be doing this if it weren't absolutely necessary. David pleaded, acutely aware of the scene he was creating. Necessary? What's more necessary than a platinum medallion, million-miler member in his paid-for first-class seat? He blustered, his voice rising. It was at that moment that he saw Alani seated 2 rows behind him, calmly sipping her water and watching the scene unfold in the reflection of her dark phone screen. Recognition dawned, followed by a surge of indignant rage. You, he shouted, pointing a sausage-like finger at her. This is because of you, isn't it? You complained, didn't you? Cried to the supervisor because you didn't get your way? Alani didn't even turn around. She simply said loud enough for David and Carter to hear. Mr. Chen, the seat Mr. Jennings is occupying 1F, along with every other seat in this cabin, belongs to my company. He is trespassing on corporate property. Please have him removed. The sheer unmitigated gall of the statement left Carter speechless. The legal phrasing, the claim of corporate property, it was a language he understood, the language of power, and it was being used against him in a way he couldn't comprehend. Corporate property. This is an airplane seat, he sputtered, a seat you no longer have a ticket for. David said, his patience wearing thin. Sir, you can deplane peacefully, and we can discuss your compensation options at the gate, or I can have these officers escort you off. The choice is yours. But this aircraft is not departing with you in this seat. Carter Jennings looked around, his eyes wild. He saw the impassive faces of the security officers. He saw the flight attendants watching with grim professionalism. He saw the curtain to business class being pulled back by curious passengers. And he saw Alani, serene and unmoved, the architect of his humiliation. Defeated, sputtering with threats of lawsuits and ruined careers, he gathered his belongings. You'll be hearing from my lawyers, from the CEO of Sterling Coal Analytics, he snarled as the officers escorted him down the aisle. Alani finally turned her head slightly. I look forward to it, she said quietly as he passed. Please give my regards to your board of directors. The threat was subtle but clear. I know who you are, and this isn't over. As Carter was marched off the plane, a ripple of quiet activity went through the cabin. The few other first-class passengers were approached, profusely apologized to, and offered packages of compensation so generous they could scarcely believe their luck, rebooking on a later flight in a higher class thousands of dollars in travel vouchers and hotel accommodation. One by one they gathered their things and left, casting looks of bewildered awe at the lone woman who now commanded the entire cabin. Within 15 minutes, it was done. The cabin door was sealed, The jet bridge retracted. Maria approached Alani's seat. "Dr. Reed," she said, her voice filled with genuine warmth. "Welcome aboard Global Voyager Airlines. It appears you are our only guest in first class today. My name is Maria and my crew, and I are entirely at your service. Is there anything at all we can do to make your flight more comfortable?" Alani looked up at her, the mask of cold fury finally softening into a tired but genuine smile. "Thank you, Maria. For now, I think I'd just like to enjoy the quiet." As the massive aircraft pushed back from the gate, Alani looked out the window at the chaos she had left behind. She could see Brenda being escorted by David Chen into an office, her face a mask of terror. She had won the battle at the gate. But the real war, the one that mattered, was waiting for her in London, and she had just taken her opponent's queen off the board before the game had even truly begun. The 7-hour flight to London transformed from a routine journey into something surreal. The first-class cabin, usually a quiet murmur of clinking glasses, rustling newspapers, and hushed conversations, was utterly silent, save for the powerful hum of the Rolls-Royce engines. For Alani, it became a private sanctorum, a flying office, a decompression chamber suspended 35,000 feet above the Atlantic. After takeoff, Maria approached her. "Dr. Reed, since the cabin is yours, we can adjust the service any way you like. We can serve your meal at any time, adjust the lighting, anything." Alani considered it for a moment. "Actually, Maria, would it be possible to use one of the other pods as a workspace? Perhaps 4F, I'd like to keep this seat for resting." "Of course," Maria replied, unfazed. "I'll set it up for you immediately. I'll bring your laptop bag over and have some coffee and snacks ready." While the crew prepared her second room, Alani leaned her head back and closed her eyes. The adrenaline from the confrontation at the gate was beginning to fade, replaced by a profound weariness. It wasn't the money. $187,000 was a rounding error in her company's quarterly budget. It was the reason she had to spend it. It was the familiar, soul-crushing weight of prejudice. She thought about her journey. The daughter of a high school teacher and a mechanic from Detroit. The scholarship kid at Stanford who outcoded and outworked everyone. The founder who was told by countless venture capitalists that her ideas were brilliant, but that someone like her might not be the right face for a company. She had fought and clawed her way to the top building Ethereum dynamics from a garage startup into a global powerhouse, believing that success would eventually build a high enough wall to protect her from the small-mindedness of the world. But today, Brenda, with her cheap uniform and petty authority, had torn a hole right through that wall. The anger returned cold and sharp, but this time she channeled it. She moved to Pod 4F, where her laptop, a sleek carbon fiber machine, was waiting next to a silver pot of Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee. The large table unfolded, and for the next 4 hours she worked with relentless focus. This meeting with the Halcyon Group wasn't just another contract, it was the keystone. Halcyon was a colossal old money conglomerate with holdings in shipping, manufacturing, and retail. Their logistics network was a tangled, inefficient mess from the 20th century. Alani's AI, Logos, could streamline it, saving them billions and making Halcyon the most efficient conglomerate on the planet. Landing this contract would not only double Ethereum's valuation overnight, but would also cement its legacy. And Sterling Coal Analytics, Carter Jennings's company, was her main rival for the prize. They offered a traditional, manpower-heavy consulting solution. It was safer, more familiar to the conservative Halcyon board. Alani's pitch was revolutionary and therefore risky. She needed every advantage. By kicking Carter off the flight, she had done more than just inconvenience him. The final presentation was at 9:00 a.m. London time, less than 3 hours after her flight landed. There were no other flights that would get him there on time. He would miss the meeting. He had, through his own boorishness, disqualified himself from the biggest race of his career. It was a twist of fate so perfect, so karmic, it was almost poetic. With 2 hours left in the flight, she closed her laptop, the presentation perfected. She returned to her bedroom at 2A, where the flight attendants had already turned the seat into a fully flat bed with a duvet and pillows. She slept a deep and dreamless sleep for the first time in weeks. She awoke to the gentle chime of the seatbelt sign and the soft voice of the captain announcing their descent into London. She felt rested, clear-headed, and ready. As she freshened up, Maria approached her one last time. "Dr. Reed, we're about 20 minutes from landing. On behalf of the entire crew, I want to say it has been a genuine honor having you with us today. I have been with this airline for 22 years, and I have never seen anything like what happened at the gate. What that woman did was inexcusable, and what you did, it was legendary." Alani was touched by her sincerity. "Thank you, Maria. Your professionalism made a difficult day much better." "One more thing," Maria said, lowering her voice. "A passenger in business class filmed the whole thing at the gate. The disagreement with the agent and Mr. Jennings. He posted it online. It's going viral. The airline's name is all over it." Alani absorbed this information with a calm nod. The public relations fallout was not her concern. It was a consequence, and consequences were for other people to manage. Her focus was singular, the Halcyon Group. As the plane taxied to the gate at Heathrow, Alani gathered her things. She was the first to deplane, stepping out into the terminal, not as a victim of a demeaning incident, but as a conqueror who had just arrived on a private chariot. Her London ground team was waiting for her, a silent, efficient phalanx of security and staff. One of her team handed her a tablet. On the screen was the Halcyon Group stock ticker, and next to it, the ticker for Global Voyager Airlines' parent company, GVX. It was flashing red, and the line was pointing sharply down. The story wasn't just viral, it was hitting the market. And then she saw the name of the parent company that owned Global Voyager Airlines, the name of the company whose stock was now plummeting because of the actions of a single gate agent. It was the Halcyon Group. The bombshell landed with a silent, deafening clap. She wasn't just flying to pitch a client. She was flying to meet the very people whose company had just publicly humiliated her. The game had just changed again, and her leverage had just increased 1,000-fold. The arrivals hall at Heathrow's Terminal 5 was buzzing, but for Alani, it was a bubble of serene efficiency. Her team escorted her through a private channel, bypassing customs and the throng of travelers. Her lead security officer, a stoic ex-SAS soldier named Duncan, leaned in and spoke quietly. "Ma'am, we've had a communication from the Halcyon Group. Their CIO, Mr. Robert Miller, is personally on his way here. He has bypassed his 9 a.m. meeting and is requesting an immediate private audience with you at the Windsor Suite here in the terminal." Alani's lips curved into a wry smile. The frantic last-minute change of plans spoke volumes. Robert Miller, a notoriously rigid and old-school titan of industry, was breaking his own schedule and coming to her. The video had done more than go viral. It had detonated in his boardroom. "Let Mr. Miller know I can spare him 20 minutes before I head into the city for my previously scheduled appointments," Alani replied coolly. It was a power play and she knew it. The Windsor Suite was the airport's most exclusive lounge, a place reserved for royalty and heads of state. When Alani entered, Robert Miller was already there, pacing by the large windows overlooking the tarmac. He was a man in his late 60s, impeccably dressed, but his face was pale with stress. He stopped pacing and turned to face her, his expression a mixture of profound embarrassment and calculating apology. "Dr. Reed," he said, extending a hand. "Robert Miller, on behalf of the entire Halcyon Group, and specifically our subsidiary Global Voyager Airlines, I want to offer you my deepest, most sincere apologies." Alani shook his hand, her grip firm. "Mr. Miller, apology accepted. Now let's talk about why your company's stock has dropped 8% in pre-market trading, and what we're going to do about it." She had seized control of the conversation, immediately shifting it from a personal apology to a corporate crisis, a crisis she was now in a unique position to solve. For the next 20 minutes, she laid out her terms. She didn't shout or recriminate. She spoke with the cold, hard logic of a CEO. Meanwhile, the karma she had set in motion was cascading across the globe, striking its targets with brutal precision. Brenda, the gate agent. Back at JFK, David Chen had escorted Brenda to the airline's Human Resources office. The head of HR for the North American division, along with a corporate lawyer on speakerphone from Chicago, were waiting. The viral video was playing on a large screen. Brenda's smug, condescending words were crystal clear. There was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. Her union representative tried to argue, citing her 25 years of service. But the lawyer from Chicago was ruthless. 25 years of service ends today, he stated flatly. Her actions have resulted in what is currently estimated to be over $30 million in immediate market cap loss for our parent company. She has caused catastrophic brand damage. She violated not only company policy, but federal regulations regarding discrimination. She is being terminated for gross misconduct, effective immediately. She will be escorted from the premises. Her final paycheck will be mailed. Brenda was speechless. Her life's work, her identity was gone in an instant. She was no longer a gate agent. She was the star of a viral video titled "Airport Karen Gets Wrecked" by CEO. She would be a pariah in the airline industry, her name and face forever associated with this single disastrous act of prejudice. Carter Jennings, the rival CEO, Carter had managed to get a seat on a flight several hours later, fuming the entire way. He landed in London in the late afternoon, his 9 a.m. meeting long since past. His phone had been blowing up, but he had ignored the calls, wanting to craft his own narrative of the events first. When he finally turned it on, he was greeted by a flood of voicemails and a single terrifyingly blunt email from the chairman of his own board at Sterling Coal Analytics. "Subject urgent. Board action. Carter. We have seen the video. We have been contacted by the Halcyon Group. Your invitation to the final pitch was rescinded this morning. The contract has been awarded to Ethereum Dynamics. Your public conduct has brought shame and ridicule upon this firm, and has directly resulted in the loss of the most significant contract in our company's history. An emergency meeting of the board was convened an hour ago. Pursuant to Section 4C of your employment contract, you are terminated for cause effective immediately. Security is currently clearing out your office. Do not attempt to enter the premises. His career was over. His blustering, his sense of entitlement, his casual cruelty, it had all come home to roost. He had laughed at Alani for not looking the part, and in doing so had proven he was unfit for his own role. He was ruined not by Alani's design, but by his own character. Ben, the junior agent. In the chaos, David Chen made sure to pull the security footage from the gate. It clearly showed Ben's discomfort, his attempts to intervene non-verbally, and his professional conduct throughout. In his official incident report to corporate, David praised Ben's composure under pressure. As the inevitable management shake-up at the JFK station began, Ben was offered a promotion to gate supervisor. His integrity in a moment of crisis had been his greatest asset. Back in the Windsor suite, Alani was closing the deal of a lifetime. And so, she concluded, looking Robert Miller directly in the eye. The original terms of our proposal are no longer sufficient. The new agreement will include a 5% increase in our service fee. Furthermore, Halcyon Group will fund a new multi-million-dollar foundation administered by a third party of my choosing, dedicated to providing STEM scholarships for women of color. Finally, your entire global workforce, from your baggage handlers to your board of directors, will undergo a mandatory, comprehensive diversity, equity, and inclusion training program. The curriculum will be designed and implemented by Ethereum Dynamics. These are my terms. Non-negotiable. Robert Miller, a man who had never been dictated to in his life, looked at the woman before him. She had turned the worst day of his company's year into her greatest triumph. She had endured public humiliation, and instead of seeking simple revenge, had leveraged it to force systemic change. She was brilliant. She was ruthless. She was exactly the kind of partner his company needed. He smiled for the first time that day. "Dr. Reed," he said, extending his hand again, "you have a deal." 2 weeks later, the world had a different texture for Alani Reed. The initial explosive media frenzy had subsided from a roaring fire to a bed of glowing embers, but the heat remained. She had become, against her will, a public figure beyond the confines of the tech and business worlds. Her picture was everywhere. Commentators on cable news debated her actions with theatrical gravity. Was she a new icon of social justice, a hero of the disenfranchised who fought back against prejudice with overwhelming financial force? Or was she a reckless, impulsive billionaire who had engaged in a vulgar display of wealth? Alani ignored the noise. She sat in her office, a minimalist expanse of glass and steel overlooking the iconic sweep of the Golden Gate Bridge, and focused on the work. The noise was external. The results were internal, tangible, and far more important. Her secure video line chimed, and the face of Jackson Cole, her CFO, appeared on the large screen on her wall. He was grinning from ear to ear. "Morning, boss," he said, forgoing any formality. "I'm just running the final Q3 projections after the Halcyon deal officially closed yesterday. I thought you might enjoy the numbers." "Give me the highlights, Jack," she said, leaning back in her chair. "The highlights?" He laughed. "Alani, this whole quarter is a highlight. The Halcyon contract with your last-minute renegotiations will add an estimated $1.2 billion to our top line over the next 3 years. Our stock price is up 28% since the announcement. The free press and brand recognition from the, let's call it, JFK incident, is something our marketing department estimates would have cost us upwards of $50 million in a traditional campaign." He paused, tapping a few keys. "And that brings me to my favorite line item, expense report. BB4, $187,452.15 for 15 first-class tickets. I have officially recategorized it. It's no longer a travel expense. It's now filed under Business Development and Strategic Negotiation. It might just be the single highest return investment in the history of this company." Alani allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "Glad to see it meets your standards for fiscal responsibility, Jack. Are you kidding me? You weaponized a P&L report. You made an airline transaction a hostile takeover maneuver. They're going to be teaching this at Harvard Business School." He said, his admiration genuine. The conversation shifted to logistics, but the point was made. Her seemingly impulsive act of fury was in retrospect a masterstroke of strategic genius. Later that afternoon, she had another scheduled call, this time with Robert Miller. The Halcyon Group CEO appeared on screen, looking 10 years younger than he had in the frantic chaos of the Heathrow-Windsor suite. Alani. He began the use of her first name, a clear sign of their new partnership. I'm just coming from the preliminary briefing with your DEI implementation team. I have to admit I was skeptical. I saw it as a necessary concession. But the people you've sent, they're brilliant. They're not just talking about sensitivity. They're talking about efficiency, talent retention, and market perception. You've reframed the entire issue for my board. Good, Alani replied. Because this isn't about punishment, Robert. It's about optimization. A system that allows prejudice to function is inefficient. It misallocates resources and overlooks talent. We're fixing a fundamental flaw in your operating system. I see that now, he said. On that note, the board has officially approved the charter for the foundation. We've taken the liberty of naming it the Alani Reid Initiative for STEM Excellence. We felt it was appropriate. For the first time since the ordeal began, Alani felt a genuine, unburdened warmth spread through her chest. A foundation in her name, funded by the profits of the company whose employee had tried to belittle her, would now educate a new generation of women, engineers, coders, and scientists. The karmic loop was not just closed, it was regenerative. The world outside her office continued to churn. She learned through back channels that Brenda had become a ghost. She'd sold her Long Island home at a loss and moved to Florida, but her infamy followed her. A blurry photo of her in a supermarket checkout line had appeared in a tabloid. She was a digital leper haunted by a single 10-minute lapse in judgment that had revealed a lifetime of prejudice. There was a grim lesson there about the permanence of the digital age. Carter Jennings's fall was more spectacular and far more public. The collapse of Sterling Coal Analytics was swift. Angry investors filed lawsuits, and a forensic accounting of his tenure revealed a pattern of reckless spending and inflated projections. He had been a hollow suit, and Alani's decisive action had been the pinprick that burst the balloon. His name was now a synonym for arrogance and incompetence in the financial world. Even the good news found its way to her. She received a short professional email from David Chen, the JFK Gate supervisor. He thanked her for her instrumental role in highlighting operational deficiencies and informed her that the pilot program for the new DEI training at the JFK terminal was showing remarkable results. He'd attached the latest employee satisfaction metrics, which were up significantly. He ended the email with a short note. P.S. Ben is doing a fantastic job. He's a natural leader. You were right to trust him. The call she cherished most, however, came on a quiet Thursday evening. It was Maria, the lead flight attendant. Dr. Reid, I hope I'm not disturbing you, she said, her voice full of emotion. I just finished the first session of the new training. There were people in that room, veteran pilots, senior staff who have been with the company for 30 years. And for the first time, I heard them having honest conversations about bias, about their own blind spots. An African-American pilot, a captain with 20,000 flight hours, stood up and said that for the first time, he feels like the company is actually seeing him. You did that. We all did it, Maria, Alani corrected gently. It just needed a catalyst. After the call, Alani walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office. The sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and purple. She hadn't set out that day at JFK to ruin lives or become a symbol. She had simply demanded to be treated with the basic dignity she was owed. The world had presented her with a choice: accept the humiliation or refuse it. Her refusal had been expensive, dramatic, and loud. But the result wasn't destruction. Brenda and Carter had destroyed themselves. Their actions were merely the trigger, The true result of that day was constructive. A multi-billion-dollar partnership, a foundation that would change countless lives, a corporate culture forced to look in the mirror, a good man promoted, a kind woman vindicated. The itinerary for her flight that day had read JFK to LHR, but her real journey had been from a moment of profound disrespect to a future of profound impact. She had bought 15 empty seats, and in doing so had created space for something new to be built. And as she watched the last sliver of sun dip below the horizon, Alani Reed, CEO engineer and architect of change, knew that was a price well worth paying. So what's the real takeaway from Dr. Alani Reed's story? It's a powerful fantasy of epic revenge, for sure. But it's much more than that. It's a stark reminder that the quiet, everyday prejudices we see are often just the tip of a very large and dangerous iceberg. Alani's response wasn't just about putting one person in their place. It was about using her power to dismantle the system that allowed that person to act with impunity. She turned a moment of personal humiliation into a catalyst for corporate-wide change, proving that the most effective response to injustice isn't just to rise above it, but to fundamentally alter the ground it stands on. This story shows that true power isn't just about having money. It's about having the vision, the courage, and the strategic brilliance to use it to demand a better world. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more true-life stories of karma and justice. What would you have done in Alani's position? Let me know in the comments below.